Priti Patel, it is so nice to see you in Washington, D.C.
Thank you,
Why
Bev.
are you here?
So I'm here doing my shadow Foreign Secretary role. I'm meeting like-minded Conservatives, basically, from political parties around the world. I'm attending something called the International Democracy Union Conference.
Sounds thrilling.
But it's full of leaders from our sister parties. So good Conservative values, beliefs, you know, those of us that are big champions of enterprise, strong economies, freedom, Bev, you know, all those core values that basically have made us such successful political parties in the past. And what better place to do it than in Washington?
And how different does it feel to you here, the political mood? Because it strikes me every single day that those true conservative values are being lived out, not just talked about, but actually enacted in policy. And there's a belief system that runs through this government which is just so well defined.
You know what, it's refreshing, and this is really the key thing. I think probably the public here, I know the public back home, they're crying out for change, actually, because they want people that will deliver, but also people with experience. And you know, the administration here, guess what, the president has previous experience, and he's brought it back with new gusto to the United States here and to the people in Washington. What I've really noticed, other than the weather is still as cold as it was when I was here for inauguration, it's probably not as cold, but even so, the snow and all the rest of it, is that when I came here in January, Washington, you know, still had a homelessness problem. It had a lot of the type of scenes, I'm afraid, we see in London, for example. And coming back now, the streets are cleaned up, people can walk around freely, you know, there is a different feel to this city, and it is a political city, obviously, because it's the heart of the administration, but it feels very business-like, very practical. Things are getting done and things are moving forward.
Now, if Keir Starmer was here, or Sadiq Khan, and they could hear you talking about England and London like that, they would be saying, well, hang on a minute, we've only been there for just over getting on to a year and a half. That all happened under the Conservatives. What would you say to that?
Well, I'm afraid they haven't got a leg to stand on, and let's talk about London. So I was Home Secretary and I was involved in helping to clear up the Park Lane operations. You remember everything that went on, tent city down there?
It was the tent city of the illegal migrants.
We actually took action. We took action against that. And as someone that, you know, is born in London, my entire professional working life has been in London, it pains me when I see what Sadiq Khan has done to our great city. London is a fantastic city. I've travelled the world, even my professional background previously, and so coming back to London has always been a great, great boost. You see it now, guess what? Riven with crime. We have a mayor of London that failed to meet his policing targets when I was Home Secretary and we were recruiting 20,000 more police officers. He couldn't even meet the targets that we'd set him to recruit more officers. He's clearly lost control of policing when it comes to law and order. Rubbish piling up in the streets. More Labour London councils, and there are London elections next year. And quite frankly, I think he is a terrible mayor, to quote President Trump. And he's a complete disservice to the people of London, who, by the way, pay a lot of council tax, and in some cases people are paying double council tax if they own a second home there.
Let me tell you, Priti, what Donald Trump put on Truth Social in the last few hours. He has taken somebody else's tweet and he says, we have two options: deport every single third world migrant, illegal alien and America-hating visa holder, or surrender your nation the way the United Kingdom has and watch your society collapse in the coming years. President Trump makes nice with Prime Minister Starmer when they're together, but they are so politically different, and he obviously has a very low opinion of how our country is handling illegal migration.
Well, and the President is right to, because it's the President of the United States, President Trump, who has adopted one of my policies, which was the Rwanda proposal to remove illegal migrants from the United States to, guess where, to Rwanda. And that's effectively what I had put in place before I left government in 2022, to remove all illegal migrants, and there was no cap to that. You know, Labour and everyone said it was not possible. They're just lazy because they fail to come up with ideas and solutions. We had a proper plan, third country deterrent, and you need a third country deterrent to remove people too. President Trump is doing it. And Bev, you may know this, the President of Rwanda was in the White House yesterday.
Yes, of course.
And he was talking about literally new deals with America, and also the President's got confidence in Rwanda as a country to remove people to.
How frustrating is that for you, to think you had that nearly over the line?
There's nothing more important than keeping your money and your identity safe online. And with so many VPN options available, choosing the right one can be pretty daunting. But this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, is making the choice easier for GB News viewers. ExpressVPN is offering up to 75% off, plus 4 extra months free. That's top-level security from just £2.49 a month, and you're covered by their 30-day money-back guarantee. So just click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code now. Remember, when you're online, you are often sharing personal data, so hackers can steal your information, your passwords, your photos, and your bank details in just seconds. But ExpressVPN encrypts your connection, making it virtually impossible for hackers to access your personal information. So why choose ExpressVPN? Well, it couldn't be easier to use. With just one click, you are protected. And ExpressVPN uses military-grade AES 256 encryption, which is the same standard trusted by the US government to guard their classified information. With their new tiered plans, you can protect up to 14 devices at once and manage passwords securely. Live chat support is available 24/7, and it typically connects you in under a minute with a real person. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to get up to 75% off ExpressVPN, plus 4 months extra for free. Start protecting yourself today with ExpressVPN.
So I did the policies, the legislation, and then obviously it was up to my successors to come in and implement it, which clearly did not happen.
Why?
It drives me nuts, Bev, and I tell you for why it drives me nuts, because you've got a Labour government that basically have lost control of our borders, and you know exactly what the Conservative proposal is right now. We have a new borders plan, which actually goes further in terms of legislation than the legislation that I put in when I was Home Secretary, which is to leave the ECHR. So we don't go through this doom loop, this merry-go-round of going back to the courts again and again. Do you remember all those judges in pyjamas, and pyjama injunctions, all this kind of stuff? We're prepared to tackle it. Now, in America, there's a very different legal system, but irrespective of that, we are the only political party in the United Kingdom that knows how to deal with this issue, but actually had a plan. We have a proposal and a plan. We've said that we'll bring Rwanda back, and now the President has demonstrated that Rwanda is a safe country and you can remove people.
Your challenge, though, as the Conservatives, will be to convince people, especially GB News viewers and listeners, that that is not something reform would do better than you on.
So I don't think we do have to convince them, because reform they talk and talk and talk. Number one, they've got no experience. They have no idea what it is like to enact legislation in the way in which I have, take it through Parliament, that's both houses, draft the whole thing, get it through, do the amendments, then operationalise a plan like that. And then the operational delivery is not straightforward. I know, because I spent time in Rwanda working with the government of Rwanda. I had to deal with all the international organisations and things like that too. But you have to have these skills and ability to navigate your way around the system to do it. We have that experience, and believe you me, that it's a different world to just sort of say, this is what we would do, to actually getting on and doing it.
But if you've put all that in place and America is already using Rwanda, that's got to be as simple, surely, as if Nigel Farage is Prime Minister, just flicking a switch and making it happen.
It is not like that at all. You've got to have trusted relationships for a start. You've got to build the connections. You've got to agree how it's going to work and how it's going to operationalise. Getting people on planes and things like that may sound easy. Making trivial and flippant comments saying, oh, it's all so easy, I can just do this. You actually have to operationalise these plans. We have the experience. We also, by the way, in the Conservative Party, we are a team, bringing all our collective experience together. You know, we've got a strong leader in Kemi. She relies on the likes of, whether it's Chris Philp on migration issues, Mel Stride on the economy. Look how he's completely frazzled the Labour government, and Rachel Reeves, who's been an appalling chancellor. She's a terrible chancellor, but also of the budget and the budget lies. And myself, when it comes to overseas, foreign affairs, relationship building, having those direct conversations, you know, and it's built on trust and long-term relationships.
We've got the most authoritarian government I think we can remember, especially in my lifetime. We've got digital digital ID coming in. We've got facial recognition on every street corner. We've got jury trials being done away with. All of this, a lot of this operating outside of legal frameworks. There's not the legislation to protect people. Would the Conservatives row back on some of those measures?
The answer is absolutely
all of them?
yes, absolutely yes. So when it comes to digital ID, we've been out there from the get-go in terms of rejecting it and saying it is simply not right. Same on jury trials. What an absolute affront to, justice, basically, and our own, I'm going to say, our legal systems and the parameters in terms of fair trial. Look, as Conservatives, we are a firm party when it comes to, defending values, beliefs, sovereignty, independence, etc., the rule of law and the application of the rule of law. But at the same time, we need fairness, the principle of fairness. What about individual liberty? What about our rights? What about our freedom to speak? Our freedom, by the way, to live our lives as we want to. These are fundamental to Conservative principles.
The problem is, we had a pandemic under your watch, and all of those principles went right out the window. And the idea that so much, especially about free speech, we had the non-crime hate incidents under the Conservatives. You've got so much bad that you have to convince the public you will undo. So is that because it's a slightly different team now? The people in power now were not the same as Boris Johnson.
So it's both. It's absolutely both, right? So let's not forget, we've been in power, yes, 14 years. We've also won elections after elections because guess what? We've been able to improve people's living standards, turn around the economy, post-financial crisis, for example, get people off welfare and back into work. These things matter. And when it comes to the issues you've been speaking about, absolutely, we're clear about our direction of travel. The country has changed. Yeah. Politics is changing. You speak about the pandemic. I've had to give evidence at the COVID inquiry. That is the right thing to do. People died. We have to move on
from all of that. People died because of lockdowns, but it was a joke.
We have to move on now. And, well, there you go. We can't keep on looking backwards. Yes, you learn the lessons. We're doing that right now. The crucial thing is people and the country, your viewers, will not want to go backwards. They want to live their lives in the country that they love for their families, having economic security. We understand that. We have the skills and the experience and the passion and determination to deliver that for a whole new generation, basically.
Do you think there's something quite inspiring to you guys about watching what's happening here in America and the absolute clarity with which Donald Trump runs a conservative value party? And it is allowing you and empowering you to talk in a different way, which previously under Biden over here, casting a very Democrat shadow, a left-wing shadow across the world. Having Trump here, does it give you guys sort of grist to your mill that you can be yourselves?
Well, I think it's refreshing. I think it is absolutely refreshing. Look, we are Conservatives. The Republican Party are our sister party. We are infused by the shared same values that we have. Freedom, liberty, economic security, a safer world. All those types of core values, they apply to Donald Trump as well, and obviously the Republican Party and what we're seeing here. I think it's fair to say, your viewers will know this and appreciate this, socialism, left-wing ideology is regressive. And you know what, in some parts of the world, it costs people their lives. Repression, intolerance, the way in which they conduct themselves. By the way, racism and anti-Semitism, that is basically what we see with a lot of the extreme left and also socialist governments. We stand tall as Conservatives because we will always defy them, and we stand up and give voice to people that feel the same way that we do. They just want to live their life without a big state dictating to them in terms of what they should be doing.
Arguably a big part of the political situation in the UK that is very difficult for any party to overcome is the position of the BBC.
Yes.
And we've seen obviously here in Washington events in the UK and how they reverberated down here with the Donald Trump edit of that documentary. Do you think the BBC did enough in the aftermath of that, with President Trump asking for an apology and a retraction? And for me, the BBC remained rather incalcitrant and they haven't been contrite enough with the whole.
So it's been extraordinary to watch, you know, what was a once great institution just sort of fall off a cliff, quite literally. And that great act of self-harm, because they did it themselves, they really did. And they were not accountable and transparent. And Bev, I'll tell you something, because you're here, you wouldn't have seen the type of comments I've been making about them. I came back from Israel last week and I have described them as the Hamas Broadcasting Corporation. I was Home Secretary that prescribed Hamas. In fact, I did it in a speech in Washington a few years back when I was Home Secretary. But even so, they refused post-October the 7th to describe Hamas as a prescribed terrorist organisation. So when they're doctoring footage and putting it on Panorama, that is not right, and it is beyond an apology, because this is several years later. They tried to cover it up. Let's be very clear about it. They tried to cover it up. So doing sort of like letters of apology, I mean, good luck, you know, with having that sit-down conversation with the president. It really actually demonstrates that they need to rebuild their reputation. Trust matters. It really does. And they are not there yet. They've got a long way to go.
You've been travelling here, so I don't know whether you're aware, but Question Time had a legal migrant in the audience, an Afghan, who was preaching to the room and to the panel about why illegal migration, why people like him should be welcomed as a refugee. I find that quite astonishing. Do you, that somebody who came into our country illegally is platformed on the BBC like that?
That's outrageous. Let me just say this now. That is outrageous. You all know from my time in government, I mean, we made it quite clear. I was the first ever minister to use the language of illegal migrants, right? And we had the civil servants and everyone else saying you can't call them that. The lefties, the Labour Party, called them irregular migrants. These are people that come into our country illegally. There are legal routes to come into our country. It's called a visa system. And with illegal migrants, they then come and abuse our system by trying to claim asylum. They are asylum shopping. They come from France, they come from safe European countries, but they claim that they're not safe. So that is why we changed, and I changed legislation accordingly. But the BBC, quite frankly, been fueling this whole issue by platforming people in that way. And by the way, not factually reporting the real truth and the real facts behind this, because I experienced this over many years in my time in government. Whenever I spoke about illegal migration or migrants coming to our country on small boats, the back of the lorries, they would always change the way, the narrative around it, and just claim that they were asylum seekers, when in fact they're not. You know, the majority of them were single men. They're not fleeing persecution. They are literally trying to asylum shop through European countries and come into our system to abuse our asylum system. And we try to change that.
And do they make the country less safe?
The answer is yes, of course they do, because they come into our country illegally. Yes, they are screened and all the rest of it. I know that from the background that I have and the work that we did. I can't speak to what this government is doing right now, and they've probably diluted those checks and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is people should not be coming to our country illegally. But the way you stop it is by having a strong deterrent. And of course we have a Labour government that have abolished all forms of deterrent. And now, of course, they've had something like 70,000 illegal migrants coming to our country this year. That is unacceptable. It makes our country unsafe, completely unsafe, and they've just got this open policy basically to illegal migrants, and that is wrong.
Can I just ask you one last question? Postponing of these elections next May, in the mayoral elections, is that a good idea? Is it politically motivated?
It's absolutely appalling, and it tells us everything we need to know about what is, quite frankly now, an authoritarian socialist government in the United Kingdom. They're running scared of democracy. That's what this is. They know they're going to lose those elections. By the way, that was an election in my county of Essex, a great county of Essex. That's just outrageous. They are now trying to erase democracy and the fact that they're denying people the chance to vote. I think that's absolutely atrocious. I think it will come back to hurt Labour, I really do. And it's just a demonstration as to really one major thing, how unpopular Keir Starmer and his awful government is.
Great to see you, Priti. I hope you brought your snow boots.
Going to need it here.
You're going to need it outside.
Exactly.
Anyway, have a good week. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bev.
Thanks.